Hold on, guys. I'm just logging in now. Okay, hopefully we can level my skinning. And we can test our new axe. Got chat up. There we go. Alright, let's go collect our mail. See how much cash we've got to spend.
I got what you need. Keep it real. Talk to me. Time is money, friend. Hurry back.
Alright. Let's fly.
Speak, friend. What do you need? May your blades never
Let your blades never dull. Alright, so let's try win Fury. See if we can get extra swings in. Where are these raptors then? Ah, the raptors are over here. Okay. I think I'm gonna need some help. Alliance scum. Yeah, I think the wind fury is not that good. Let's go back to Flame Tongue. I'd love to play a mage, man. It'd be so much easier to level as a mage. Resist. Oh, it's a Monday. Yeah. Yeah, these trolls are so annoying, dude. They're so grouped up. Can't even imagine they get this on hardcore. Trying to do with this quest on hardcore. Yeah, you'll just have to wait for respawns. I'm boxed in now, I think. Shit. God damn it. Alright, let's go further south. Oh yeah, the new Street Fighter trailer's dropped. I wonder how it's gonna be received. Theory-wise, let's have a look at you then. The Classic Plus situation.
Here's another video about Classic Plus, a game we collectively assume is coming, yet one which looks quite a lot different in our individual minds. One person might expect a retail-esque experience, another just a continuation of Classic WoW, without increasing the level cap and just new raids and dungeons. Others, such as myself, aren't expecting much at all, but ultimately want to see a new vision for the IP. In my first video discussing Classic Plus, I lamented about how I didn't think it was possible to create a version of World of Warcraft that was long-term anymore.
Oh, nice.
It simply isn't the way the general demographic Blizzard caters to consumes theme park MMOs. It isn't how retail WoW is designed, and if Season of Discovery is any indication, then the philosophies of retail WoW are going to be the driving force behind this Classic Plus version. After all, that's all Blizzard wants to create: short form, flitting, seasonal, and more positively, fun in the moment-to-moment sense. Sure, it's mostly just combat, and sure, it's just an aggregate of samey avenues to eventually start raid logging, but at least there's that world we all love, acting as the inextricable backbone to all that is World of Warcraft. The issues I outlined stem from the very real concern I have over just ending up exactly in the same position that birthed Classic in the first place, a version of the game that isn't conceptually reminiscent of WoW as it once was, and one that likely inhabits the ethos of retail more so than anything else. Certainly it won't be anything like RuneScape, one of the few long-term MMOs on the market today, because it obviously can't be. WoW is a theme park, while RuneScape is kind of a sandbox. Naturally, the only other sources of inspiration are equally modern takes on the theme park MMO, whether it be the retail version of WoW or other competitors like Final Fantasy XIV. Every game that is as distant from Classic WoW as Classic WoW is from retail WoW. So, what is it that we can even expect when the people currently slaving away on what might be either a month or hopefully years worth of fun are consumed by the audience capture of an audience not super amicable to a version of the game that Classic Plus is inherently based on? After all, even the contemporary audience for Classic is hardly appreciative of what were at one point the defining features of Classic. Level boosts? Sure, why not? WoW tokens? Yeah, guess so. No world buffs? Who cares? Bad audio? Okay, I actually do care about that one. That's why the sponsor of this video is Raycon, a company dedicated to bringing you the best open-air earbuds that I have ever used. Wireless, lightweight, and never loose. I've been using them more than I ever thought I would, while vacuuming, working out, or just going on a walk. The ability to do pretty much anything with audio. Some players are keen on stripping away features of Classic and adding poisonous ones in their place prior to even the launch day of Classic Plus rolling out. And if they aren't keen, they are at least accepting. That's the benefit of having a player base that is just desperate for anything new. If you're hungry enough, even boiled leather can have some appeal. Something I took note of when this conversation truly started was that the WoW community as a whole doesn't really have a collective agreed upon understanding of what Classic Plus should be, and that puts Blizzard in the unfortunate position to have to improvise using tools that, once again, are contemporary. You shouldn't be surprised if modern features of WoW make their way into Classic Plus, packaged as entirely new, novel things. Transmog, hell, even housing, all avenues for extensive monetization and collectathon gameplay that retail WoW now inhabits with very, very little pushback from its core audience. $75 treehouse? Sure, it's only a cosmetic, and therefore Blizzard can price it in as abhorrent a way as they want. $90 mount? I guess it does give convenience no other mount does, but at least you can buy it with a WoW token, right? I don't want to spend yet another video lamenting on the state of affairs. To those that have watched my prior content, or if you want to just assume based on my general lack of expectations and beleaguered disposition, I obviously don't want any of these features, nor do I think they are necessary to turn a major profit, nor do I think there is any chance they won't exist in a version of WoW that requires a real, actual development team creating real, new content. I think whatever version of Classic Plus arrives within the next year or two is one that is meticulously curated by Blizzard's modern-day monetization philosophies. Bear with me here because we're about to get kind of crazy, but I promise this will tie into Classic Plus. What I mean by modern-day monetization philosophies is this 4 or 5-pronged approach Blizzard invented to keeping people within their sphere of content. This half-conspiratorial model of monetization that I assume Blizzard is employing is, frankly, Genius, probably the last genius thing Blizzard has done in the past decade. It's a model adapted from modern-day streaming services, how Netflix's goal isn't to have you subscribe for a specific show or film, but rather endlessly scroll their portfolio. Let me try to explain. Retail WoW operates in 3 to 4 month increments. Patches happen every 66 to 99 days, but by and large, 3 to 4 months is a smooth on and off board for any player that isn't committed to playing the entire time, which most players of course aren't. To be clear, the game really isn't designed for perpetual engagement anymore. Retail WoW, at the behest of the audience begging to have their time respected via removing tangible grinds from their favorite MMO, is an incredibly short-form game. You can chew through the vast majority of a new season's content within the span of 2 weeks, and unless you're interested in repeating the same content over and over again, but at a slightly higher difficulty, chasing the same exact items you already have, yet scaled up by increments of a couple percent, that's kind of it. And to be fair, that's fine. That's just the modern version of the game, and it should exist as it does. You know, it is what it is. But bugs aside, this repetitive cyclical format has allowed Blizzard to create a shallow, quick turnaround season that delivers an expected, samey rhythm of content to all those players who love retail WoW's exceptionally fluid gameplay and wonderful dungeon and raid design. Two features that have remained amazing for years. Retail WoW to this day has the best combat of any MMO, at least to me. But you won't play a new patch for much longer than a Diablo season. If it wasn't for the endless time gating of player power progression, it might be even shorter. There aren't any unique chase items demanding grinds, everything is flat. To people like me who love grindy long-term MMOs, I hated this. It felt low effort, boring, trite, and eventually made me quit. Now I dabble a couple times a year for a couple weeks. But it was genius from a profit standpoint. After the reception to BFA and especially during the whole Shadowlands ordeal, the idea of respecting time by diminishing long-term grinds was at the forefront of player-driven discourse. This in major part stemmed from the comparisons drawn to Final Fantasy XIV. Needing to prove their receptiveness and agility, Blizzard had to respond by providing players with less of that, more optional content delivered as catch-up systems or cosmetic collectathons. But Blizzard is still a company. Retention is still key. They don't want players to only engage for 2 months of every year, so they had to ramp up patch cadence at the detriment of QA, and even more importantly, condense the expansion cycles from 2 years to around 18 months. All of this was done to facilitate a new monetization philosophy that allows them to deliver shallow, short-form content that gives off the air of not demanding time while still keeping players within their content sphere. There's this flow state a company can arrive at when their profit incentives fit perfectly with their player base's expectations or lack thereof. I call it corpo consumerism, when a player base begs to have their time respected and the company can appeal to them by making shallow, simple, and readily short-form content that requires far less time to develop. It's a win-win. Spend less time creating content, yet charge the same price for that content and be praised for it. All on the expedited schedule speeding to the next full-priced expansion. That alone is a controversial statement though. There isn't an insubstantial number of retail players who praise Blizzard for their incredibly quick content cadence, arguably delivering more content than ever before. But I don't see it that way when the vast majority of content delivered is as deep as a puddle or a complete reskin of a previously existing piece of content. Much like Helltides used to work in Diablo 4 seasons, what color of Legion Invasion will Retail WoW get this patch? Who knows? I guess it depends on the color of the patch logo. Alongside this, there's a distinct presence of heavy power progression time gating, which, much like the corpo consumerist element described before, has the simultaneous benefit of players feeling like their time is respected because they never quote-unquote fall behind as a result of player power being doled out in weekly increments. And that benefits Blizzard since they can keep developing fast turnaround, facile systems that get artificially drawn out by said time gating, which also keeps players subscribed for longer. It's a win-win. That's not to mention the myriad bugs that have only gotten more problematic in time. It's all to facilitate a 3 to 4 month cycle where players engage for a month, then by and large drop off, and that's not a problem for Blizzard, whereas for a company only creating a single live service game, it might be an issue when the population dramatically declines almost immediately after a patch or expansion release. For Blizzard, it's by design. They get the clout of respecting time while simultaneously just funneling players into another version of the same game. It's no surprise that the subscription numbers now match those of Legion when we're combining like 3 or 4 or even 5 versions of WoW running simultaneously, aligning their release schedules to account for each other's downtime. The last graph published by Blizzard years ago kind of showed this off, numbers rivaling prior peaks, but only due to having multiple versions keeping retention simultaneously. The most frustrating part of this is what is derived from it. People assume that retention for any one game has improved, but in reality, it just kind of improved for the company. Individual games suffer all the same. When a portion of the retail demographic falls off after they chew through the short-form seasonal content, Blizzard doesn't want them to go play other games. No, that's bait. They want them to go play World of Warcraft, Classic, Anniversary, Remix, Season of Discovery, Plus. Whatever suffix we want to attach is irrelevant. The cadence is what's important. That cadence, those aligned release schedules paced perfectly to fit the downtime of the other, is the multi-headed hydra of Blizzard's contemporary monetization philosophy. Now, you can access multiple versions of the same game with individual cash shops with different level boosts and entirely different reasons to remain subscribed, all the while not requiring any one person to invest more than a couple weeks at any given time. Why do you think selling level boosts benefit them? It's not just because they want people to hit the new content faster, it's because they need people to hit the new content faster. You don't want people to spend months leveling up like they did in Classic WoW when the new retail patch is right around the corner, with its own delicious cash shop full of $90 mounts and $80 treehouses. To be clear, the framing here is of course negative because I think it's bad for the genre, but that doesn't mean you have to hate it. And from a marketing standpoint, it's genius. If you just want to play World of Warcraft, regardless of what version there is, this probably doesn't strike you as anything out of the ordinary, and that's fine. After all, one of the biggest problems with theme park MMOs was content bloat facilitating a difficult onboarding process for new players. New players didn't want to slog through 120 levels of boring catch-up content only to then raid log with their friends. For the longest time, this issue of bloat made it challenging to create content designed to cannibalize pre-existing content. Today, it doesn't matter. It'll only last a month anyway. Look at the releases. They are by intent non-competitive. You aren't supposed to stick to one version of WoW. The ideal player engages with them all. The missing puzzle piece is Classic Plus. That's the final head of this hydra, and one that will complete Blizzard's most defining success in today's industry: their ability to hyper-monetize a buy-to-play, subscription-based, cash shop having, player boost selling, WoW token peddling MMO, one that is monetized harder than some free-to-play games that I enjoy. But now, multiplied by 4 individually monetized games tied together by a single subscription. And whereas before it'd be a hard sell to monetize what is effectively a re-release of the same content that launched decades ago, even though they still tried, with Classic Plus, they have every excuse to do just that. If they invested millions upon millions of dollars into development, do we really think the game will just be a subscription price and maybe eventually a level boost or WoW token? No, of course not. This is Blizzard we're talking about. If there aren't 6 or 7 competing methods of monetization running simultaneously, then that's because they had to momentarily disable one due to a game-breaking bug. But you know, I'm not gonna sit here and complain about whatever version of Classic Plus will eventually release, because to me, the end goal is as clear as day. The rollout will certainly be successful, and Blizzard knows that. It might even inhabit more than the average patch or expansion's worth of content. And despite my concerns, I'm still really excited to play it. But what about post-launch? That cycle must be retained. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how. How will they find a way to continuously shorten any one player's journey in Classic? Level boosts, experience boosts, who knows? World of Warcraft today is not a single game. It's also not a collection of disparate games. It is a spider's web, a collection of titles that are synergetic with one another, a part of a greater retention network. They can't exist separately, not like, for example, RuneScape 3 and old school RuneScape. They are dependent on each other's downtime, and as a result, heavily influenced by one another. That influence
Righto, Willie.
With the first BlizzCon in years this September, rumours around a supposed Classic Plus announcement are only growing in the WoW community, and with that, excitement and expectations are only rising. But if Classic Plus is indeed getting announced at BlizzCon, that also means we're getting close to the point where all of the discussions and debates that have been spinning around this topic actually have to start translating into decisions. And some of these decisions are going to be really difficult ones, because there's a handful of issues that don't really have a clean answer around this version of the game, problems that aren't going to go away no matter how good the core game design is, because Blizzard are going to have to navigate them whether they're ready or not. And today I wanted to talk about what I think will be some of the larger issues to face Classic Plus. The first and probably most fundamentally obvious one is that Classic Plus cannot just be vanilla. By definition, it needs to change, and it needs to change quite significantly, whether that's new raids, new quests, adjusted class balancing, additional content patches, or anything else. The whole premise of Classic Plus is that it's vanilla and extra stuff. And when you start changing things, you're going to hear from a certain part of the player base that things have gone too far. I think around 2019, with the release of Classic, a lot of people would have called themselves vanilla purists. Those people coming off the back of private servers such as Nostarius, who had already been playing the game for years. And I think to a degree we'll see a lot of those people re-emerge when Classic Plus starts to happen. Yet if it's too similar, it's just going to look like all those different versions of vanilla, which we have been playing for the past 7 years now. Between all our re-releases, there have been about half a dozen different freshes through vanilla. And there is a counter-argument here too, and a good one. It's that players who specifically want no changes don't really have to worry about Classic Plus, because you already have what you want. It's called Classic Era, and I'm supposing those servers are not going anywhere, so anyone who wants that true vanilla experience forever has that option to them. And Classic Plus doesn't have to, and it shouldn't cater to an audience who already have what they want. That being said, there's definitely going to be some challenges here, because if you change too little, Classic just feels like another vanilla, and if you change too much at once, you risk alienating the people who came for the Classic experience in the first place. Finding that line between the two is going to be difficult, and it's going to be something which absolutely grows over time. But to some degree, even at launch, Classic Plus needs to separate itself from just being another fresh. Before we go on, a quick word from today's sponsor, boot.dev, and stick around because I've got a special discount code that you won't want to miss out on. Ever been curious what the code behind games actually looks like? Well, boot.dev teaches you to code for real, starting as a beginner in Python all the way to expert. They've built the whole experience as a hands-on RPG-like journey, and really for me, hands-on learning is the absolute best way to do this. You'll pick up things so much faster when you're actually doing them in real time instead of just theory, and throughout the curriculum you're writing real code and building real projects, the kind of things you'd actually be doing at a job. Boot.dev has a massive amount of content available too, but it's broken up in a way that makes it manageable. You're not staring at an overwhelming wall of lessons, it's structured into clear paths and courses so you always know what's next. And if you need extra practice on specific concepts, the training grounds provide personalized coding challenges. You can grind through as many challenges as you need before moving forwards, and as you progress through lessons, you'll also unlock pages in the spellbook, a kind of growing cheat sheet of notes and references you can always come back to when you need a refresher. So whether you want to dive right in or just check out Boot for the first time, who knows what this could be the starter for you. You can click the link in the description and use my code Willie to get 30% off your entire first year for Boot.dev. Thank you as always to Boot.dev for supporting the channel. Let's get on back to WoW. Another issue which really divides people is a feature that came right at the start of Classic in 2019, and I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. That is layering. There's been a huge community survey called the Classic Plus project fairly recently. You may have seen it, it's definitely worth a look. And on the topic of layering there, roughly 34% of respondents said they wanted layering to work as it currently does, 33% wanted open world layering but not in cities, and 27% wanted no layering whatsoever. That's pretty much a three-way tie between 3 different options, but it is also worth understanding what layering really is. because layering was a brand new feature built specifically for Classic so that we didn't have sharding. But in essence, both systems aim to do a similar thing in dividing the amount of people up in the open world, so not to cause overcrowding, too many queues for quests, or competing for resources. But when we're getting to the 33% who say they want layering in the open world but not in cities, that isn't layering, that's sharding. And that's a retail system that targets specific zones when they become overpopulated. A layer is a copy of the entire world. However, sharding is when a certain zone gets overcrowded, then new shards are created. And if Blizzard were to bring sharding into Classic, is it going to be a better solution than layering long term? I mean, possibly, but maybe it's better the devil you know than the one you don't. Because retail sharding can just kick in so seamlessly that you don't notice it's there most of the time. Then again, if you've played retail much, how often do you see a load of people out in the open world or in cities? I think when you're doing world boss quests, that's the most people you see on one screen at a time, but even when world buffs drop on Classic Era these days, you still see more people gathered together in one place. Another issue with layering is people abusing the system for their own benefit, which has been a problem since it's existed really, although it's become more difficult to abuse as of late. But when you're joining a group to dodge world PvP, to get more resources or anything else, it's the system which isn't perfect, but it serves the game well enough. To be honest, I highly doubt Blizzard are going to can this system in advance of Classic Plus. They've been working on it for 7 years now, and the alternative would be what is in retail, and I think that would overly split up populations in the world. So for me, ultimately, I think layering definitely isn't perfect, but it's probably about as good as we're going to get. Next topic is one that absolutely has to be brought up. Classic Plus has got to make money. On some level, we all know this, even if nobody really wants to talk about it. At the moment, Classic is covered by a standard subscription, which technically can get you access to any version of WoW, albeit you need to buy expansions. And that's worked fine for the re-releases of old content, but if Classic Plus is going to expand their development team, be receiving new patches and evolving content, I don't think Blizzard's going to settle for just subs anymore. The question is what Blizzard will be willing to add and what the community will be willing to accept on top of subscriptions. And there are definitely a few possibilities here. Typically, Blizzard has expansions where they sell packs, they sell boosts and tons of other stuff, and they can really rake in a ton of real life gold from that. However, I don't know how that system will work with Classic Plus, given that it's expected to go from major patch to major patch. To me at least, part of the whole point of doing Classic Plus is to not have major expansions, but to just continue onwards from level 60 where we are. Then again, who knows if I'm right to believe that or not. Or alternatively, perhaps Blizzard are looking at a more seasonal battle pass-esque type system, sort of with Diablo 4 or Overwatch. This would mean a new major patch would come out, and to access certain content, you'd have to pay something on top of your subscription. The thing with battle passes is they often come with a way to accelerate towards rewards or get cosmetics, and I'm not sure how well that system fits into an MMO, to be honest. What would also be less of a surprise long term would be for the WoW token to find its way into the game in some form. They already put it in Wrath Classic in 2023, about a year and a half after that version launched. But I wouldn't be concerned about the WoW token on day one whatsoever. I mean, just think about how it would work with an economy that doesn't exist yet. You'd have to buy multiple WoW tokens to afford your level 40 mount. It would just completely break the game and be so dumb. That being said, after some time has gone by, say 1 year or so, and Blizzard's coming up with a new major big patch, they may just slide in the WoW token as an extra bit of monetization. Then again, I'd expect them to do things such as server transfers, character features, all that kind of stuff, which they typically do. I think for monetization, a lot will depend on how Blizzard is really planning to roll out Classic Plus, but what I can pretty much guarantee you is they'll want more than just your subscription fee. But if we're paying more, or have the option to pay more, we should expect more in return, right? It only seems fair. And that leads on to the next topic of game masters and botting. So if Classic Plus succeeds and attracts a healthy population long term, it's going to be botted heavily. And that's not pessimism, unfortunately, that's just the reality of the situation. Bots go where money is, and Classic Plus will absolutely, for however long, be where the money is. Now, Blizzard has run ban waves against botters throughout Classic's history. In 2020, they banned around 74,000 accounts, and more recently in 2023 during Wrath, I remember them saying they banned approximately 120,000 bots. but however much they've done, it never quite seems to be enough. Even now on anniversary servers, we've seen a new wave of casino gambling bots, and there being posts on Reddit about creative ways to kill them every single day. Obviously botting is harmful for the game, but again, it's where the money is and people are buying gold, so it really is a problem on both ends, of Blizzard being capable of doing more but not doing it by hiring GMs, and people buying gold so they're facilitating bots to exist. What I can say about the botting situation and GMs is that we've had Classic for 7 years now, and essentially what Blizzard are doing is what Blizzard are willing to do. I wouldn't really expect them to do anything beyond that. Don't get me wrong, I want them to, but if we're being realistic, this is what they've shown they want to do. As for how much that impacts the game, only really you can say for yourself. Something else worth bringing up for Classic Plus is how much things have changed, not just since vanilla in 2004, but even since vanilla in 2019. The people who are playing the game are just much different than they used to be. I'd estimate your average Classic WoW enjoyer would be late 20s to early 30s at the moment. These are people who are better informed about the game, they're more focused on efficiency, and on average they have less free time to grind away at stuff on games, and this combination creates some real friction with the design assumptions that vanilla was built on. The classic example is gold. Everyone needs it, everyone wants it, a lot of people don't want to farm it. But in vanilla, gold farming is something you just need to do. You spent time out in the world, gathering herbs, running dungeons, selling materials on the auction house. It was slow and repetitive, but when you get home from school, you have pretty much the rest of the day to do whatever you want. When you get home from work, maybe not so much anymore. But now players have seen their classes, they know exactly what consumables they need, they know their pre-raid this before you hit level 40. And this goes back to a mindset that I covered in a video some time ago called the classic quit point, where people get to a certain point in the game, they hit raid log status, and then essentially all they want to do is log in, raid, log off again. And the speed at which players consume the content and get to that raid log status has been sped up so much over all these different versions of Classic. Players who have done vanilla 3 or 4 times know the optimal path to absolutely everything. They're getting everything done in a matter of weeks or maybe a month, and then after that the prospect of going to farm gold and competing with bots does not seem very appealing. But what I'm getting at with this change in player attitude is that Classic Plus needs to acknowledge that the people who are playing this game are also different now, and that ties into thinking harder about horizontal content, things to do that aren't just the vertical progression ladder of level, gear, raid. Not everyone needs to be at that bleeding edge of progression for the game to feel logging into, but there has to be enough diverse reasons to log in that the endgame doesn't immediately collapse into raid logging for the majority of the player base. Of course, there should absolutely still be a ton of group content, and vanilla has never been short on group content, but I think with less time there's a growing amount of the player base who will benefit from stuff which is either a little more horizontal or even solo friendly. Next point is about overhype or comparison, because it's worth talking here a little bit about Turtle WoW, because it's going to be brought up constantly when Classic Plus is finally announced. Turtle WoW ran for years before they flew a bit too close to the sun, and Blizzard eventually had them shut down fairly recently. But that version of WoW was a realized Classic Plus that thousands of people enjoyed, and it contained tons of things which I know people would love to see in Blizzard's own version of it. But the problem with using Turtle WoW as a standard for Classic Plus at launch is that Blizzard isn't inheriting years of development work. They've been working on Classic Plus for how long now, do you think? A little bit before Season of Discovery? They were already alluding to it years ago at this point in time. But when Classic Plus launches, I think we really need to treat it as its own thing. A fresh server, even a well-resourced one that's been worked on for a long time, is still a fresh server, and it's not going to be able to match up with one that's been going for years and years with tons of community feedback and growth. Then again, maybe I'm wrong and Blizzard have gone absolutely all out for the launch and it is going to be completely mind-blowing. But either way, I think we need to temper expectations a little bit and not get overhyped and end up being disappointed. There's one last thing I want to bring up, and this is again from me looking through Classic Plus project posts. There were 2 really upvoted comments on the systems part of the site, and they were essentially saying the same thing. One that Blizzard should encrypt all data to prevent data mining, and another one to say no extended beta to hide what the new content will be. And both of these had about 95% upvotes with hundreds of them, so clearly this is a very popular opinion. I don't know how you feel about that, you can let me know, but essentially it's saying Blizzard should hide content until it's in front of us, that people don't want to know anything about what is new until it is finally there. And I'm going to be honest, I think this is completely the wrong call, and I absolutely disagree. I want to give you one example of why, and that is called Phase 3 of Season of Discovery with Nightmare Incursions. This was genuinely one of the worst systems I've ever seen being introduced to the game. People were farming hundreds of gold per hour, getting up to the next level cap in a couple of hours compared to questing. It gave really good gear, a lot of the quests just felt kind of weird and unfinished, and it was just frustrating and frankly bad. And it may not have in reality caused that much damage, but people felt as though it did. They felt as though they missed out on something and that they're now behind. And it really was the start of the downwards trend for Season of Discovery until things started to pick back up post 60. I want to draw a comparison with old school RuneScape here, and no, it's not about player voting because, I mean, I kind of like it, but I don't think Blizzard will do that. What I want to highlight is how Jagex publishes developer blogs explaining about what they're going to be changing, what options they're considering, why they think these things need to be changed, and so on. At the moment, they're doing something called a Summer Sweeper, which is a bunch of changes across the game that they do every so often. It's a document that walks through the current development thinking within the game, offers options with reasoning, invites real discussion before anything is committed to, and they even go and revise it following community feedback. This is what I want to see from Classic Plus. Honest explanations of what Blizzard is trying to solve with a given piece of content, transparency about what's being tested and why, and yes, we would lose out on something here. We wouldn't have that day one discovery of what's brand new and fresh. However, word travels so fast on the internet now and things get sold so quickly that I don't really think it's worth the trade-off anymore. All in all, essentially, before things go live, I would love to hear about them first and why they're being put in the game. But these are some of the largest issues I think Classic Plus is going to have to work through. None of them really have an easy answer. The player base is divided on layering, there is no such thing as frictionless monetization, botting isn't going to go away, and the community's expectations have been shaped by years of fan servers. What Blizzard has going for them is the demand is clearly there. I'm seeing more and more posts crop up about Classic Plus recently, and I think whenever happens, this will be the biggest thing that's happened for World of Warcraft since Classic in 2019. As for when it will release, that's still a bit of a question mark, but BlizzCon in September will hopefully hold all the answers. So let me know what you think about everything I went over today. Are there any clear solutions, and would any of these gone the wrong way be a deal breaker for you? Shout out to boot.dev for sponsoring this video. You can check them out for free via the link below and get started on back-end web development today. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one very soon.
Alright guys, I think I'm going to have a break. My back is starting to hurt. Alright guys, I most probably will stream tomorrow. One more level and I think I can do all of these. But yeah guys, I'll see you guys tomorrow.